I want you to just picture a moment, one that happens in um, total silence. It's late, maybe 2 in the morning. The house is completely still, and you're lying in bed just staring at the ceiling. And in that silence, a question starts to form in the back of your mind. It feels incredibly loud, even though you haven't said a word. It's a question about your own body, your own private habits. And that question is simply, am I normal?
It's the universal whisper, isn't it? It's the thing we are all sort of afraid to ask out loud, especially when we're talking about the private habits we keep, the things we do to relieve stress or just to self-soothe. And the reason that question feels so loud is because we live in a world that just loves to quantify everything.
We really do. We're in the era of the quantified self.
Mm.
I mean, think about it. I track my steps, my sleep, my screen time. I have a whole dashboard for my life. And we can't help but apply that same, rigid spreadsheet logic to our own habits. We want a graph. We want a trend line.
Exactly. We treat it like a performance review.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Like there's this little manager living in your head with a clipboard.
Right. Checking boxes. Did you do this too much this week? Not enough. Is your frequency trending up or down? It becomes this source of stress where we feel like we're failing a test. But the thing is, no one ever gave us the study guide for the test. We're just guessing.
That's such a perfect image, the internal manager. It's the checklist trap.
Yeah.
We get obsessed with the how much. But the whole point of this deep dive today is to throw that clipboard away. If you're listening hoping we're going to give you a magic number like 3 times a week is healthy, but 4 means you're broken, you're not going to find it.
Yeah.
Because that number doesn't exist.
It just doesn't. And searching for it is actually part of the problem. So instead, we're going to pivot the entire conversation. We need to move from how much to why. We have to get from the mathematics of the act to the psychology of the intent, because that's where the real answers are hiding.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Because I think for a lot of people, the anxiety really does start with the math. They want to know where they sit on the bell curve. Even if we say the numbers don't matter, the human brain just craves a baseline. So if we look at the actual landscape of human behavior, what does that reality even look like?
It is messy. It's beautifully, chaotically messy. If you look at the broad spectrum, the first thing that jumps out is just the sheer scale of the variance. We see people who engage in self-pleasure daily, sometimes multiple times a day. We see people who do it a few times a month. And we see people who don't do it at all. And the crucial point is that you can find healthy, happy, totally functioning people in every single one of those categories.
That is a massive spread. It's not a bell curve. It's more like a flat line across the whole chart.
In a way, yeah. Now, statistically speaking, if you absolutely forced an average, you'll see data points kind of cluster around once or twice a week for adults. But, and this is the important part, that number is incredibly misleading if you treat it as a rule.
Right, because behind every statistic is a human being, not a robot programmed to hit a quota. And our lives are always changing.
Precisely. Context is everything. You cannot evaluate the behavior without evaluating the life it's happening in. Imagine a 17-year-old student. They're full of hormones, under immense pressure from exams. Their frequency might be very high. It's a way of discharging all that energy.
Okay, so that's one end of the spectrum.
Now contrast that with a 40-year-old who's juggling a career, 2 kids, a mortgage, and, hasn't slept 8 hours in 6 months. Their energy, their reality is completely different. Their normal is going to look nothing like the 17-year-old's normal.
And even for one person, it changes, right? I mean, I'm definitely not the same person I was 10 years ago. My habits aren't the same.
Absolutely. It fluctuates. It shifts with stress, with your emotional state, with how connected you feel to a partner, or even just to yourself. We tend to think of our libido or our habits as like a fixed trait, like eye color.
I have brown eyes and I have a high drive.
Exactly. But it's not like eye color. It's more like, it's like weather.
Oh, I love that. It makes it feel less like a function and more like an ecosystem.
Yeah.
You mentioned something when we were prepping for this idea of a personal rhythm. I think that's such a helpful visual.
It's the tide metaphor. This is probably the best way to visualize it. Think of your habits not as a flat, static line on a graph, but as a tide. The ocean doesn't stay at high tide forever. That would be a flood. It doesn't stay at low tide either. That would be a drought. It rises and falls based on the gravitational pull of your life, your mood, your energy, the season.
That is so freeing, because if you expect the tide to always be high,
you're going to panic when it inevitably goes out. You'll be standing on the shore thinking, where did the water go? What's wrong with the ocean? And But nothing is wrong. It's just low tide, and it's supposed to move.
So if the numbers are useless without context, then how do we actually evaluate our own health?
Mm.
Because the worry is real. People are asking, am I normal? Because they feel uneasy about something.
This is the pivotal moment. This is where we have to shift our focus. We have to stop looking at the physical act itself and start looking at the psychological motivation. The question isn't, how many times did I do this? The question is, what was the intent? What job was I hiring this habit to do for me?
Okay, let's dig into that. Because if we hire habits to do jobs, some of those jobs are good and some are maybe not so helpful.
Yeah.
What are the healthy drivers? What does it look like when the tide is rising for a good reason?
In a balanced dynamic, the drivers are things like genuine relaxation, curiosity, self-discovery, or just simple stress relief. It's a way to reconnect with your body. It's a positive coping tool. It adds something to your day. It leaves you feeling lighter.
It's restorative.
Exactly. It gives back more than it takes. But then there's the flip side. There's what psychologists call emotional avoidance.
That sounds heavy. What does that actually look like?
Think of it this way. Imagine you're sitting on your couch and a fire alarm starts blaring in the kitchen. It's loud. It's jarring. It's screaming that there's smoke somewhere. Emotional avoidance is walking over to the alarm and just holding down the mute button.
You stop the noise,
Yeah.
but you haven't put out the fire.
You haven't even looked for the smoke. You just couldn't handle the sound, so you silenced it. In this scenario, the noise is an emotion you don't want to feel. Loneliness, anxiety, rejection, maybe just a profound emptiness.
So the habit becomes the mute button.
Precisely. If you're using the habit to numb those feelings, that's when the relationship changes. You aren't seeking pleasure anymore. You're seeking an escape hatch. You're anesthetizing yourself against your own life.
And I mentioned that's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Because the problem is, it works.
Right.
In the short term, that mute button works. The noise stops.
It does work, chemically. You get a wash of dopamine and endorphins, the brain calms down, the anxiety recedes for, 20 minutes, but the fire is still burning. And now you have a second problem. You're terrified of letting go of the button.
This brings up all the invisible baggage we carry around this topic. Even just talking about it, I'm sure some listeners are feeling that tightness in their chest, that I shouldn't be listening to this feeling. Where does that come from?
It comes from the shadow of culture. We absorb the myths of our environment before we can even challenge them. Depending on when you grew up, you might have heard some really wild things. That it causes weakness or acne or even leads to madness.
I have definitely heard the acne one. It's amazing how persistent that myth is.
It is, and let's just be very clear. It is scientifically unfounded. There are no such physical consequences. But here's the thing about psychology. Knowing that intellectually doesn't always stop the feeling of shame. You can have a PhD in biology and still feel a twinge of guilt because of something you heard on a playground when you were 8.
Right. It's not the act that hurts us. It's the guilt we wrap around it.
That is the true villain in this story. Guilt and secrecy. When we label a natural behavior as bad, we force it into the shadows. We hide it. We lie about it. And that creates isolation. And isolation is the breeding ground for anxiety.
And here's where it gets really tragic. You'd think that shame would make you stop, right? I feel bad, so I won't do it. But the research suggests it actually does the opposite.
It's a cruel paradox. Think about the loop. Isolation increases anxiety. Shame increases stress. And if your primary coping mechanism for stress is this habit,
Then the shame just drives you right back to it.
exactly, you feel bad, so you seek relief. The relief makes you feel guilty. The guilt makes you feel bad, so you seek relief again.
It's a self-perpetuating engine. And for a lot of us, it probably goes back to childhood. If the topic was treated with total silence, you grow up feeling like even thinking about it is a crime.
Yes. You internalize that silence. You assume the silence means wrong. But understanding that something is normal doesn't encourage excess. It encourages peace. It takes the charge out of it. When you turn on the lights, the monsters disappear.
So let's get into the mechanics of why we get stuck in that loop. What is actually happening in the brain when we're in that cycle?
Well, simply put, your brain is designed to learn from rewards. It's an efficiency machine. When you engage in this behavior, your brain gets a wash of neurochemicals that provide relief. And the brain goes, that felt better. I was stressed. I did this, and now I'm calm. I should remember that.
It's a shortcut. Stress leads to relief.
That's the habit loop. It's a normal process of reinforcement. It's not a moral failing. Your brain is just trying to survive the stress you're feeling.
So if the mechanism is normal and the act is normal, when does it actually become a problem? Because there is a line, even if it's not a number.
The tipping point is when it starts to cost you something in your daily life. It's about the opportunity cost. Are you losing sleep? Are you skipping social plans to stay home? Are you struggling to focus at work?
It's about what you're missing out on.
Exactly. If it's interfering with your ability to live your life, it's shifted from a pleasure to a compulsion. And this leads to my favorite analogy, the toolkit analogy.
Oh, I love this one. It makes mental health so tangible.
We all have a toolkit for handling life, right? A healthy one is diverse. It's got a hammer, a wrench, a screwdriver, some tape, different tools for different problems. You might call a friend, go for a run, meditate, or engage in this habit.
You have options.
But what happens if you empty that toolbox until the only thing left is a hammer?
On every single problem looks like a nail.
Exactly. Sad, hammer. Bored, hammer. Anxious, hammer. If this habit is the only way you know how to manage stress, that's where the fragility is. It's not that the hammer is bad. Hammer is a great tool, but it can't fix a leaky pipe.
That makes so much sense. It explains why someone might feel so out of control because they literally don't have another tool within reach.
And that's a terrifying feeling, to be trapped with just one option.
So how do we start to fill that toolbox back up? If someone is listening and realizing, uh-oh, I think I only have a hammer, how do we move toward balance?
The first step is a shift in your internal monologue, from judgment to curiosity. This is the hardest but most important step. Instead of asking, what is wrong with me? You need to learn to ask, what do I need right now?
Such a kinder question. What do I need? It assumes there's a valid need underneath it all.
Because there almost always is. Maybe you need comfort. Maybe you need stimulation. Maybe you just need more sleep. When you can identify the need, you can choose the right tool.
And sometimes figuring out that need requires help. I think a lot of people view therapy as the place you go when you're broken.
And we need to reframe that entirely. Therapy isn't for broken people. It's for curious people. It's an exploration. It's like hiring a guide to help you map your own internal territory. It's about understanding your patterns so you aren't ruled by them.
It's about growth, not just repair.
Beautifully put. And we also need to talk about respect versus restriction. Often, people who feel guilty try to go cold turkey. They set these rigid, punishing rules. I will never do this again.
Which just sets them up for failure. And then the shame is 10 times worse when they slip up.
It creates a binge purge cycle, like
Yeah.
a crash diet. Instead, we should view taking a break as an act of self-respect. You're doing it not to punish yourself, but to see what else you enjoy. You're exploring other forms of relief.
Expanding the repertoire, finding other ways to feel good.
Yes, building a robust emotional life where you have many sources of joy. That's what true health looks like. It's not about abstinence, it's about abundance, an abundance of options.
So as we wrap this up, let's try to synthesize all of this. We started with that question, am I normal? In the middle of the night.
And the synthesis is this. There is no magic number. Normality is a spectrum, not a point on a graph. What matters is how the behavior fits into your life. Does it serve you or do you serve it? Is it a tool in your kit or is it the only thing holding you together?
And the core truth really seems to be about bringing this out of the dark.
Healing begins when we stop hiding what makes us human. We're biological creatures with complex emotions. Shaming them doesn't work. Understanding them does.
It's funny, we spend so much of our lives at war with our bodies, trying to dominate them or silence them to make them comply with some chart we found online.
And that war is just exhausting.
It really is. I want to leave everyone with a thought to carry with them. We often view our bodies as these machines to be regulated and fixed. But what if we shifted that? How much kinder would you be to yourself if you viewed your body not as a machine to be controlled, but as a companion to be understood? A companion that's just trying, in its own way, to get you through the day.
That's the ultimate shift, from control to compassion.
Thanks for diving in with us.
Always a pleasure.